many of which are now gone. So he copies this, for example. And apparently, it's somehow garbled translation of a Zapotec document, represent a testament or written declaration originally written in our language, Zapotec translated into Spanish, as proof of the sovereign of our ancestors in heathen times. And again, Ocalay baptized Don Domino Cortés. You can read it for yourself, I don't read it, but it's more or less the same kind of information that was recorded by Rosendo Perez 50 years later. And then the last piece of information. In the archives of Don Alfonso Caso, one of Mexico's most famous anthropologist historians, here's a photo of him, and the lady next door, the lady next to him, is not the local lady, it's Doña Eulalia Guzman, who got it before. Insiders, that's very famous, difficult, very difficult personality, Mexican anthropology. Anyway, Don Alfonso Caso, extremely famous archaeologist, anthropologist, also government official, the founder of the National Institute for Anthropology, the founder of the National Institute for Indigenous Affairs, etc. In his archive, in about 12 years ago, I found this photograph, which was of an unknown document, was registered as unknown. And at the back was a little text that said, an unknown document is taken from a photographic plate provided by Rickards. Rickards cannot be anybody else than Constantino George George Rickards, who was a British vice consul in Oaxaca and was a big collector. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is that in the oral tradition of the elder man of Ixtepeji, it says it's a German consul that it was. But this gives us a lead that it was, in fact, it was a consul, but it was a German one, it was the English, the British consul, who may have been involved in buying the coverage after it was taken out of town. Otherwise, how would he be able to get a photograph of detail of this document? And in the document, I looked at it for a very long time, as you can see. It's a little bit difficult to read, but I can see here, but anyway, by just looking very long at it, miracles happen, and of course I had a better reproduction of the photograph. But by just looking at the photograph and looking at the glosses and these texts that are written on the document here and there, I could make up two things and conclude two things. First, it was a Zapotec document, which is in the photograph, because all these words in Pistache are in Zapotec. The greenish thing turns out. And it's apparently about a De Juarez family, because this blue line connects all the people in the photograph, and it's apparently something of a genealogical scheme, with these glosses naming the people that are painted in this document. And the last name that appears all the time is the Zarate. Juarez, also Juarez. Zarate. So when we combine that with the information that was already published by Rosendo, talking about Diego de Zarate, Diego Juarez, Zarate, etc. Next one, I was pretty convinced that this was indeed a photograph of this lost document of Ixtepeji. And then I found these documents in the National Archive of Mexico City that indeed the Juarez and Zarate family were the rulers of Ixtepeji during the colonial period. So you can see here all their names, etc. And in fact, these same names are the ones that are on the photograph. So it makes it undoubtedly clear that the photograph was the lost document of Ixtepeji, which we could reconstruct thanks to the information given by this elderly man in 1956 and by what Don Martinez Garcia was able to copy in the end of the 19th century. That was what we knew. So when the document arrived here in Oaxaca, photographs of the document arrived in Oaxaca, we already knew there was a lost document of Ixtepeji. And we already had an idea of how at least part of the document looked like. And we already knew it was about the Juarez Zarate family. So we had an idea. So, of course, when then photographs and Michelle opened his email, like, what? I know this document! In February 2013, we visited Ixtepeji for the first time. And I had long hair then. And so for the first time, the town authorities, which stand down in the area, the document. They had some vague memory that it once document. And they were, of course, fascinated by the discovery of this document in Milwaukee. Next one. Afterwards, last November.
The other November.
Yeah, we had November last year, we had a special fiesta in Ixtepeji, in which people of the Milwaukee Library came down and personally handed over a facsimile introduction to the Ixtepeji authorities. It was a very, very nice big event, very important. We did that also in church, and we had an enormous audience. It was incredible. So, now we have the next question. Okay, now we know that this thing that we knew existed until the Mexican Revolution in town is now in Milwaukee. How the hell did we get there? Not really a logical place for us to go. We were able to reconstruct the history of the document because in Milwaukee they had the records of whom they bought the document from. So in the records, other than the library of the American Geographical Society, there was still some of the cards that said this document was bought from above Edwin Place, who was, when we Googled him of course, turned out to be a consulting civil and mining engineer, who was working in the first years of the Mexican Revolution in Oaxaca. At the end of the Porfiriato, beginning of the Revolution, he was working in Oaxaca. He was working with a guy called Elton, who, he got away when the revolution broke out. Elton didn't, and he was shot in the central square in Oaxaca. So Place was more lucky. He got out, but he got out in a very weird way. In April 21st of 1940, the Americans invaded the town of Veracruz, which has a very strange history why this invasion happened. It was a weird kind of invasion. It was basically an attempt to block the harbor of Veracruz for the introduction of German arms for the Huerta faction of the conflict that at that time was going on. The Americans stayed for quite some time, and instead of fighting, they started putting drainage down and do some engineer stuff, and then at the end they moved away. The interesting thing is that, of course, when the Americans invaded Veracruz, it was not such a good idea to be an American in Oaxaca at that time. So the government hired a special train for Americans in Oaxaca to get out of Oaxaca. And on the train was Mr. A.E. Place. This is from the New York Times, May 1st, if you remember, April 21st of the invasion. May 1st, he's already out. 10,000 have fled from Mexico, peril, all Mormon colony and so on, going out, seek safety. Our consulted place. And then in the text, other travelers leaving Oaxaca said that they did so upon the advice of the government, who furnished special trains and military escorts as far as Mexico City. Consul of Canada has reported to the State Department the arrival at Veracruz of the following persons from Oaxaca. And Mr. Place and his wife of Boston are on that train. So he got to Mexico City. From Mexico City, they moved to Veracruz because it was also not a good idea to be an American in Mexico City at the time. Next one.
Oh, wait. Okay, let's skip this. You want to skip this? Let's skip this. Let's skip. I'm sorry.
Maybe it turns up next.
What?
It will turn up next.
You think so?
Yeah, because basically
no.
What happens.
Okay.
But basically what happens is he stayed for a while in Veracruz.
Wait, you wanted me to look?
Working with the Americans. He was an engineer. So he knew about engineering, which is what the soldiers were doing. They needed an engineer, so he was hired in the cemetery department of the American Army in Veracruz, worked there for a couple of months. When the Americans moved back to the United States, he was on that boat, and in his suitcase was the Codex of Ixtepeji. He then arrived in New York, was of course in financial trouble because all his business in Oaxaca was lost. Mining business was impossible. He became short of money and thinking, well, what can I do? Maybe I sell this strange document. Who do I sell it to? Well, I don't the the Library of the American Geographical Society in New York. So he offered it for sale. The society was interested in buying it. They bought it for a nice price. But at that time, of course, we are already in the middle of the First World War. So the American Geographical Society was not really ready to start studying an old Mexican manuscript. They had to deliver tons of maps all the time, every day, to the American presidency, who was involved in a world war. So they said, well, this is a funny document. Put it in this drawer here, and when the war is over, we look at it. Well, yeah, let's do it sometime. The war is over. And they forgot to look at it until they showed up in 2012 in Milwaukee. That's how it got to Milwaukee. Fascinating history. That's a typical history of what happens to this kind of document. So, what is it? Montalban, the central valleys of the city of Oaxaca, are very important for one intellectual achievement. The Mesoamerica, or the central valley of Oaxaca, is one of the 3 regions in the world where we are sure there was the autonomous development of writing. There are only 3 regions. It's Mesopotamia, about 3000 BC. After that in China, 12,200 BC, the first writing of China. And then 500 BC in Montalban, in the central valleys of Oaxaca, in the mountains of the Oaxaca. That's the third moment mankind autonomously invented the idea that it was possible to put language in writing. Speech in writing. Next. Of course, over the thousands of years that followed after this invention, writing in Mesoamerica took many different forms, like it took in Mesopotamia and other areas of the world. So what we have at the time of the conquest are basically the last traditions that arose from a very ancient group 2,000 years before. Basically, this is Mesoamerica, which is like the darker color. It's the area usually known since 1943, I think, as Mesoamerica. And within that area, I think you spoke about this.
Yeah, we have.
Good. Within this area, there are basically 2 traditions. One is the Maya writing, which at the time of the conquest was pushed to the northern part of the Yucatan Peninsula, although in the classic period it was a much larger area where it was used. At the time of the conquest, it was basically in the northern peninsula. And then in the central part of Mesoamerica, there was picture writing, a kind of curious writing system, unique on the world level, which used pictures to, it's not based on the representation of language. So the purists say, oh, it's not really writing then. Well, we can discuss about that, and it's a very complicated theoretical discussion. I think in general people accept it as writing. This is named Sudan, the Aztec Empire, and the most important area in Mesoamerica, where the most beautiful, the most complex documents were painted is Namisar, in this area. This is the city of Oaxaca. This is where we are. So we are really on the border of a very important scribal tradition that made incredible moves